Hello and welcome to the podcast You're Better Than That, hosted by me, Hannah Miller, and joined by my friend Zoe Rossfordell. Hello.
Hi, Hannah.
Hello. We are going to get into a topic that affects pretty much everyone in one way, shape or form, but especially people that can be called sensitive strivers. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before.
No,
It's new to
never.
me as well. Sensitive strivers are a group of people who are hardwired to process the world around them more deeply and often their own toughest critics. And I was thinking that lots of people who listen to our podcast are probably sensitive strivers. They're thinking more deeply, they feel things more deeply. And then the big problem that sensitive strivers can have is when you're in a world with a huge amount of information, in every way, shape or form, we are constantly being bombarded with information and higher demands on our time and our thinking, then we might find ourselves falling into the trap of overthinking.
Interesting.
Yeah. Apparently, half to 3/4 of adults confess to overthinking, to thinking too much.
Mm-hmm.
And the data suggests that if you're 25 to 55, let me just check this out so I'm not making something up. If you are 25 to 50, hold on a moment. 73% of 25 to 35-year-olds chronically overthink, about 52% of 45 to 55-year-olds. And I'm in the group in between those two. So we probably are about 65% overthinking. So this is all about spending too much time in the thinking phase, overthinking, finding ourselves bombarded by thoughts, different types of overthinking, which I would like to get into in a minute. I find for me, and it'd be interesting to know what your overthinking looks like. I think one of the things that I know I do, two things, is sometimes when I've had a conversation with someone, especially if it was quite an important one, I can think about what I said a bit too much afterwards and find myself thinking, oh, did I say what I meant to say? Did I say too much? Did it come across okay? Sometimes I even might send a follow-up text afterwards to say, I just want to be clear, this is what I meant. Because I've thought about it and thought, oh, I should have handled that a bit differently, or how was I taken? And I think my other type of thinking that I do a lot of is I just have quite an active brain. So I find just the process of a quiet brain something that isn't so easy for me. I find getting to that place of just calm and quiet in my head something that I have to work much, much harder to get to than maybe other people do. What kind of overthinking might you do, if you do any? You've got a calmness about you, which probably means your thinking is calmer.
I definitely do overthink. I usually go to worst case scenarios.
Right.
So if something's happened, or maybe I've said something and I've thought, oh, have I upset the person? And then I go too far. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so replaying something or thinking this is going to end up here because I did or said that.
But then often I end up somewhere quite irrational because of the overthinking.
Yeah, because these things are highly unlikely. And I think when we speak about it with another person or we say out loud, that often that gives us a bit of a reality check, doesn't it? And they'll be like, nobody's thinking that.
Yeah.
Nobody's given it a second thought. And I do think that actually sometimes saying out loud the things that we are thinking about, even just before we even get into the types of thinking, that can make a massive difference, because you suddenly realise this is how it sounds when I say it out loud, and how would I feel if somebody else said that to me?
I've also heard someone or somewhere, when you are often overthinking and you're thinking, oh, the worst thing's going to happen, someone said, say what the worst thing, like the actual worst thing that could happen. And it's often something that is so far out of reach that it puts things into perspective.
It does. There's a really great clip on This Is Us where two of the characters have a conversation with each other, where they play that game with each other, and they go to the nth degree of I'm worried that this is going to happen, and it's something really far out, and so the other person almost like tries to top that and say, well, I'm worrying that this is going to happen. And again, saying those things out loud kind of looses their grip a little bit on our thinking, and we realise, okay, I've said it now and it probably is a bit irrational, and actually if that thing does happen, can I handle it? The answer is you can. You can handle a lot more than you realise you can, and thinking about stuff that hasn't happened or might happen just causes us to be exhausted, but yet we do it. It's human nature to do it, and me just saying don't do it is a silly kind of solution. I think another thing I'd say at the top of this podcast is, I heard somebody say this a while ago, people are thinking about you a lot less than you realise.
Yeah. People are concerned about themselves.
Yeah. And they're not thinking about the finer detail of the thing you said or the thing you wished you'd said differently. They're really not doing that. Most people are not doing that.
Yeah.
And they've moved on and haven't given it a second thought and probably get what you meant anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 3 types of overthinking that I thought we could talk about. So listeners could have a think, do I do this type? Is this one of my things? Is this something that I need to handle better? Or is this not really what I do, but I know other people that I love do? So the first type is called rumination.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're ruminating, it's when we are dwelling on past events. So a little bit of that idea of, oh, I should have said this, regret or guilt, or just replaying of things that have already happened. So it's a rear view mirror type of overthinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's people who are reflecting on moments or missed opportunities or ways they could have handled things differently. They're normally negative. They're normally fixating on a negative thing that's happened or a negative thing that they may have missed out on or should have handled differently. People who ruminate things that they might do is particularly fixate on negative feedback that they've received or something that they see as that. They might bring up previous setbacks, previous examples of failure, previous examples of slip-ups or things that they've done before as evidence as to why this might happen again. Or there might be some cautiousness that comes because of this triple checking work, wanting to be sure that, that moment doesn't happen again. So ruminating is all about getting caught in that whirlpool of regrets and mistakes that have been made or things that could have been handled differently. Mm-hmm. I think the aspect of this I relate to is probably ruminating over conversations, not so much over past failures, although I can probably pull up every piece of negative feedback I've ever been given. And they do bruise. I mean, we need to do a whole episode on handling negative feedback. That's a separate conversation to this. But often the rumination is this sense of like, it's a worry, it's an ill-at-easeness about something that might not have taken place how we'd hoped it had done. And if I just could go back and do that differently or say that differently, or if I just answered that interview question differently or told that person what I meant in this way, shape or form. And I think it's actually worry, really. Rumination is a type of worry about things that have already taken place.
Sure.
Do you think you ever ruminate? I mean, you're a future thinker, so you maybe don't.
I don't know if I do.
No, that's good. That's good. And I wouldn't say that this is a massive one for me, but there will be people listening who are ruminators. I remember working with someone and she said to me that when she drives home, she used to have like about an hour journey home every day and she would replay everything from the day.
Sure.
That's the kind of thing that rumination is. It's going over those moments of the day and not we all do like a level of like making sense of our day and that's really healthy. But rumination is when you start to worry. And I remember working with a doctor who said that she used to lie in bed and replay all her appointments in her head and think about whether she'd missed something really important or whether she'd given them the right medication doses. So that's like, high stakes rumination. Again, there'll be people listening in jobs with real responsibility where ruminating is about what they've already done and thinking, I don't know whether I did the right thing.
Yeah.
So there's one thing worrying about upsetting a friend. It's another thing thinking, have I missed a really important diagnosis?
I think it might be different for other people, but I wonder if I would have a different answer if I didn't work with people who I felt safe with. Like I wonder if I had interactions with a lot of people who I didn't know, and I wonder if I would do that a lot more. But I wonder if you're safe and you feel comfortable with people, there's less need to do that.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's a fair point. And I also think it ties into people's attitude to mistakes. And if you've got a healthier sort of, I can do better next time and I'll do that differently, or whether you've got a really high stakes attitude to mistakes, I think that would also tie into it. In terms of this type of thinking, if this is something that you do, one of the suggestions that can be given around this is actually scheduling time to allow yourself to do it. So maybe like that person who does it on the car journey home, allowing yourself a period of time that you then stop. So rather than somebody just saying to you, well, don't do it. I mean, that sometimes is really annoying advice to give to someone when there is a way that their brain thinks that they are it's part of their personality to be a reflector and to think back over things and to consider and cogitate. So having it almost like a time limit on and say, I'm going to do it then. And if it happens at other times, I stop it.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't become overwhelming. Like you could have a specific place you do it, the commute, walking the dog, sitting in your armchair, or maybe you journal it for 10 minutes and you write down all those things. Oh, I think I sounded stupid when I said this. I missed the opportunity to say that. Or even if it's something that's causing you future, almost a bit of worry about having this again, looking at, naming what that worry is or what that piece of feedback was, and then making a plan to do it differently another time. And another thing that you need to do is, if you've made a decision around, and this is really good advice, having the worry, let's say the thing was, oh, I said a really stupid thing in that meeting, and you're replaying that over and over and over again, right? Something like that. Mm-hmm. And I have had those moments, and you're like, oh, cringe, I can't believe I said that, or I did that, and I did a stupid thing. I remember one time, this is just a silly story, but one time in a job many years ago, Sam and I actually worked in the same building, but for different, our offices were in the same building for a short while. And one day Sam came into my office with a really highbrow guest who he wanted to just introduce to his wife, like somebody who was really senior and well known. And oh gosh, I can't believe I've decided to tell this story, but I've started now. I ruminated over this for a while. So I stood up to say hello to this man and to shake his hand. And I was wearing like a elasticated waist skirt that went down to the floor, like a long maxi skirt. And underneath my skirt, I was wearing a thong, just for context. Can't believe I ever wore thongs. Anyway, I turn around to get something out of a drawer for him, and I tread on my skirt.
Oh no.
I know, hideous moment. And I kind of recover quickly and we sort it out. But I ruminated over that moment. Like, if I could do that again and that not happen. And then there are other much less hideous things, which are more like you say a thing in a meeting and you think, oh, that didn't land how I thought it should, or I sounded a bit stupid. I think what we've got to do is say the thing, or give ourselves a moment to overplay it, or talk to a friend about it, and then almost go, right, pop that balloon now. It's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. It's gone. It's over. And sort of bring some discipline to the thought so that it doesn't grow and mushroom. Mm-hmm. And I think if you've decided you're going to do that ruminating in the commute, or when you're sitting in a chair, or whatever it might be, this is for people who really struggle with this. I think when it comes, you have to just say, not now. I deal with that in the car.
Yeah.
And you like push it to the side and you say, I only do it then, to stop it becoming this overwhelming presence in your life. So if you are somebody who does this, I would really encourage you to think, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes a day to allow myself this reflective process that can sometimes be difficult, and you put a lid on it and you put it back in the drawer.
That's so good.
That's type 1.
What's the next one?
The type 2 is called future tripping. Okay, so rumination was the first one, and this is future tripping. And this is, instead of thinking about the past all the time and things that have already occurred, we're concerned about what lies ahead. It's not just about a little bit of anticipation, because we all have anticipation for the future, but this is where future tripping gets to the point where it might even hold us back. Uncertainty about what could happen if I do this, the potential for future failures, fear of the unknown. And this is another type of overthinking. So this could be things to watch out for, spending excessive energy planning for every scenario and feeling prepared for every eventuality. Mm-hmm. So this is more than just a little bit of be prepared. This is, this might happen, this might happen, this might happen. It's also that you could find it hard to celebrate successes because you're thinking about what's next. Or you're like, oh, well, I can celebrate this a little bit, but you never know what might come down the line, and you probably shouldn't praise me too much because it might all come crashing down around my ears.
Do you think you do that?
Maybe a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe do that a little bit. And then the final one is restless agitation, driven by thoughts of all the outstanding things you haven't yet done. So this is almost like a lack of peace in the now because of all the things that are still yet to be done. So probably, I would say I'll probably do a little bit of this as well, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think this is all about that idea of being overwhelmed by all the stuff to be done in the future, or overwhelmed by all the future possibility and all the things that could then go wrong. It's a bit of foreboding joy. Do you remember we talked about that before? Yeah. When you're like, I can't quite enjoy now because this is so lovely that I'm bound to have a terrible phone call tomorrow where I hear some awful news.
Yeah.
You know, when people talk about things like, it's too good to be true, or life feels so good right now, there's just got to be something around the corner.
Yeah.
Future tripping sounds like it could be a little bit like that. Or even just being overwhelmed by what's coming down the line and the potential workload that you've got. It could be something not quite as big as foreboding joy, but it could just be more that you're feeling like there's so much to do that I can't even get my head around it, and you're overthinking all of that. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, maybe sit more in what you just said at the end there. The overwhelm of what's to come.
Yeah.
And things then end up, well, for me anyway, because I'm overthinking it's worse in my mind than it actually is. I find writing things down so helpful for that.
Because it's kind of putting it somewhere and giving it like a tangible presence.
Yes.
I totally agree with you. And I think we have to decide how near and present is this thing that we're worrying about. Like, is it a now? Is it an immediate thing? Yeah. How real is this overwhelm? What's for now, and what can we sort of put on the long list for later?
Yeah. My husband makes me do that when I'm having an overthinking episode. He'll say, write everything down. And then he'll sit with me and be like, right, cross that off. You don't need to even think about that.
That's really good.
A 3-month thing. You don't need to do that now. And we'll whittle it down to maybe like 3 to 5 things that I can action. And then it's so much more manageable.
I think that's a really good practice, because again, like when we are feeling overwhelmed about all that's coming down the line, it can then get irrational, a little bit like the past ruminating becomes irrational because you can't do anything about that. And some people will find that actually it's not just about the immediate things that they've got going on, but they're even living in the 5 years from now, and how I'm going to make sure I do everything that needs to be done in order to be where I want to be. Yeah. And all of these things rob us from the present. And I think if there's anything that most people can relate to, many of us, like I don't know what the figures would be, but being present in the present, fully present in the present, is so hard. And that's because our thoughts are somewhere else. That's the reason. That's the reason we're not present. It's because our thoughts aren't here. Our thoughts are either thinking about a previous conversation, or one that's coming, or something we need to do, and they're not in the moment that we're in right now. And when we lose the moment that we're in right now, we're not really anywhere. Yeah. And I think it's been one of my biggest challenges of adult life, actually. I have a word for the year, and one of the years my word was present, because I think I can find it very difficult to just be here now. Fully, brain, thoughts, body. And that's why people do things, don't they? Like practice the kind of practices that bring people to here, like focusing on something right now. And maybe something that could help somebody with this type of overthinking is to do things that really ground them and root them in the now. Yeah. Writing it down is a great idea. But I also think doing something like, I don't know, 5 minutes of lighting a candle, having a bit of quiet time, and just being present with like, this is what I'm doing right now. Yeah. Doing some movement with your body, doing some sort of meditative or prayerful practice that grounds you and roots you right here, right now. Yeah. Because all we have is now. And I think that's something that, I would want to talk about another day, but it is all we have. And the problem with all of this and this is that these are not where we live. We live here now.
Exactly.
I think it's really, really helpful to be reminded of it. All sounds so good, doesn't it, when we talk about it? And so easy. It's all so tomorrow, easy. Just stop thinking about the past, stop thinking about the future, and you'll be fine. Just write it down and it'll go away.
You'll be right.
No. But we can do things that help. These are things that help us deal with our natural personality tendencies. And I think what we're talking about here is not being... none of this is being dysfunctional, but it can become dysfunctional if it becomes completely overwhelming. That's the problem. And so if we can have some strategies that help us build safety nets around our behaviour, it helps us from doing more than we should. Yeah. Now, the third type of overthinking is over-analysing. So this is not so much about being bound by time. So we've talked about the past and the future. This is more about having the necessary depth? Do I have everything I need? So this might be somebody who feels that in order to give a presentation, they've got to know everything there is to know about it. Before they buy a washing machine, they've got to have done enough, research on every possible washing machine brand that there is. And, there are times when that stuff's really helpful, but when it goes into excess, that's over-analysis, and that's what we might call paralysis by analysis, or paralysis by analysis. I was right the first time. And it's when we're like, I can't move forward because don't know whether I have everything I need. So if you've got to do this type of thinking, you're more likely to be a procrastinator because you're delaying until you know what you need. You're needing to keep seeking people's approval. So my middle son is an overanalyzer, and this can hold him from deciding on things he wants to buy, whether it's as simple as clothes, or what to do in the big next steps of his life, or what to spend money on. And then what happens is, if you don't make the decision, a decision is made for you.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And what's interesting here is overanalyzing is when you are not able to make decisions with the right weight of sort of priority and depth. So you're almost giving as much depth to a smaller decision as you would a really big decision, like where am I going to go and where's my career going, or what's my next job. You're adding that same level of thought to buying a new washing machine, and they shouldn't have that, because you're just getting overwhelmed by, I've got to make a right decision, and right decisions come from knowing everything that I should. And I think this one is about, again, a boundary around it, which is how long am I going to allow myself to think about this, and creating deadline and creating urgency so that you actually do make a decision, and reminding yourself that by not making a decision, you are making a decision. This is about embracing good enough. When I talk to people, I work with loads of people who do this when they're thinking, I can't do this presentation because I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough resource, or I don't know everything there is to know. We have to decide that we've done the best job we can with the time and resources available to us. And decision making is less about perfect and right and excellent and wrong, and more about what was the best decision I could make based on everything that I knew at the time. And I think if we can give ourselves a bit of peace around this idea of, okay, how much time have I got? Like, if I'm going to buy a new washing machine, you need to do your research in a couple of days, because the washing's going to keep stacking up. If you're going to buy a new house, you can take a bit longer. So almost rating the decision in priority, risk, and deciding how much information you need. And again, partnering up with someone who is going to give you a slightly different perspective to the one you've got. There's one last thing I just want to quickly mention, and that's something I hadn't heard of before, which is ants, which are automatic negative thoughts. I just want to mention them because what I simply want to say is something I realised a few years ago was, when I have a negative thought, or I could go down any one of these roads that I'm more than capable of doing, this idea of them being automatic is really helpful, meaning the first time you have that thought, it's out of your control. So if I have a thought which is, oh, what did they all think of you when you went to that meeting today? That's an ant. That's an automatic negative thought. And it's come into my mind, intrusive, and I didn't want it to. If I let that thought settle and get itself comfy and grow that thought and listen to it, then it's no longer automatic. I have cultivated it. And that's the bit I have control over. But when that automatic negative thought first comes in, I can kind of go, stop that. And bring it under control and say, no, thank you. I'm not going to go there. I'm putting it down. And every time it comes, we bring the discipline to not go there. And I guess I wanted to mention that in the overthinking, because we don't have to own every thought as being our own. And really we don't have to own every worry as being our own. Not everything that comes into our head has the right to settle. We have to learn to be a bit more gatekeepers of what we're thinking about, what we're listening to, what voices we're listening to, what people's perspectives are, and learn to say, not today. I'm not going to go there today. That's not good for me. The last thing I just wanted to mention, which is about decision making, this is a quote that I came across in my preparation, and I really liked it. And I'm going to leave us with this thought. I'll probably put it in the newsletter as well. Confident people aren't more likely to be right. They're more willing to make imperfect choices.
Love that. I just love you to
Yeah.
quickly chat about the purpose pursuit.
Yes, because we are almost closing the doors.
And I think this is really important, actually, this topic, for people to get to know themselves and really know who they are.
Yeah.
That could be a really good next step.
Definitely, because when you do the purpose pursuit, you find out more about why you might be behaving in one of these ways and what the personality trait is that's leading you there. If you're a learner and you're somebody who loves knowledge, then you might find yourself, that's one of the reasons why you are over analysing, and gives you a bit of a frame of reference to realise why this is tricky for you, rather than that you're just a bit broken in this area. And also, if you're this whole overthinking can play into missing an opportunity, and some people don't do things that are really good for them because they've overthought it and then the moment has passed. So going back to my point that if you don't make a decision is made for you, the same's going to happen with the purpose pursuit, because we will close the doors and you miss the opportunity. So there's no point saying, oh, it wasn't meant to be. Well, no, if you don't act, it won't happen. We've got to take much more control and ownership over what we're doing. So I think if you're thinking about doing the purpose pursuit and you want to know and understand yourself better, and you're actually stuck in the, is this for me? And you're having an overthinking moment and you're thinking, is this for me? Then it probably is for you, because you're stuck in something that's holding you back. And the whole point of the course is to help us get into a place where things stop holding us back.
Yeah.
So if your decision to do it is based on some sort of internal wrestle around, is this right for me? Can I do this? The answer is, it's absolutely for you. And let's help you grow that confidence so you know what to do next time you're stuck in that place.